Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new live stream. Make sure you guys like the stream down below, subscribe, hit that bell, do whatever you got to do. We're gonna have a lot to get into tonight, I'm sure. As you guys have seen, there's been a lot of developments in the 2024 presidential race. We have a debate tomorrow. Not going to talk about the debate tonight because there's not really a whole lot to talk about. We will do another live stream tomorrow night, more likely than not after the debate, kind of giving a recap because people tend to like that sort of thing. But nevertheless, tonight, there's not a whole lot of debate discussion. Oh, who's going to do this? Who's going to have this debate strategy here? What's going to happen? We know we've covered it too many times. It's going to be the same thing as last debate. Trump's not going to be there. You're going to have all these other people just competing for scraps, and it's not going to get anywhere. There's really no point for a lot of people to watch it other than just from a pure entertainment factor, watching the JV squad largely filled up with these neocons just trip over themselves. It's going to be funny. But nevertheless, we have a decent amount to dive into today. We have some announcements. Content will resume tomorrow. Haven't put a video out in the past couple of days, but lots going on right now, but I'm still doing the best to get content out. Moreover than that, it's important that we talk about the topics tonight because DeSantis is in shambles. We've known this for a while, but now because they begin to get in utter shambles and even in more shambles than they were in before, well, they're getting loud, they're getting anxious, they're getting angry, they're getting annoying, they're getting insufferable. They are getting as insufferable as it gets. And we thought that already was a point that was eclipsed. Oh, they've reached the peak of insufferability. No, they get worse and worse as the days go on. And we'll discuss that. I've been attacked by some lead influencers that we're gonna dive into because these people are now supporting a Democrat to own the MAGA Republicans, the evil MAGA Republicans that they claim DeSantis was one of them and then he's better than Trump, but now they're supporting Democrats. Why? We're going to get into that as well. Also, Virginia, they have their legislative elections coming up this fall, this November. It's one of those off-year states. Republicans killing it in the early vote so far, which is very surprising. And yeah, it's only one day, of course, but what we do see is the fact that Republicans are starting to take advantage of that, which is a good thing because they haven't been doing that in many places. And yeah, Virginia is just one of those states, but if anything, it's been the blueprint state, given our successes that we've had there over the past couple of years. And if that really mounts to be anything where they retake the state Senate, it becomes a full functioning red state where you have all the statewide office holders Republican, then you also have a Republican state House, a Republican state Senate, while going on the offense on certain issues in a Biden plus 10 state. Regardless of however you want to chalk that up, that's impressive. So we'll see what happens on that front. But nevertheless, I also wanted to bring up this idea because we have so much to cover. We have so much drama in the election sphere, mainly because you have these, competing wings of the GOP, and you have a lot of people out there that just don't get it. Some of them believe things that are holding us back. And even some of you, maybe not you personally, but some of the audience out there tends to send in some comments that are a little bit out there in terms of how grounded in reality they are. And I think it's important that maybe we do a segment. Maybe we do a weekly show. I was thinking maybe we could do it on the second channel, or do we do it a part of a live stream or whatever. Haven't decided what it's going to be yet. But where we clap back at these sentiments that we hear, and we have a laugh at some of these things as well from time to time. Call it setting the record straight. You have so many people with so many takes that are just wrong. And I think it's important that we set the record straight, make it accurate. I think it's important that we could potentially work that in as some sort of a segment. And I put this up to a poll, and most people tended to agree. 8% disagreed, actually. 8%, and that's falling. It was higher than that when there were less votes. It's fallen significantly. And maybe that 8% just doesn't want to watch it. I don't know if they're saying it's not a good idea. But 74% said they would watch. 17% said they'd maybe watch or put it on the second channel or whatever. But I think a lot of people would be interested in that. I think it would be very good content. I think that it's something I could work on because we haven't really had any new forms of content. I mean, we've done the documentaries a couple of times over the years. I put out 2 out earlier. Would like to do more of those. There's a lot on the plate, a lot on the schedule. But now that it seems like we're really settling in, getting more of a set schedule ahead of election season, I think it would be important to just kind of, branch out into other forms of content. And I think that, a lot of you guys would enjoy that because it seems like, yeah, we do the same thing and it's good and I'm going to continue to do it, of course. But at the same time, what could go wrong with experimenting with new forms of content here and there? So that's what it is, because you have a lot of people, even people that I like sometimes, people that are on our side, people that are not on our side, people that pretend to be on our side, and they say the dumbest things for better or worse. And I think that it's important that we, like I said, set the record straight. So doing that in like a podcast form, but I'd prefer to like put my face in it, do like a weekly segment. I don't know how long it's going to be, but I think it could be a good addition to the channel, good addition to the brand. And I think a lot of you guys agree as well. So I'm considering it. We're thinking about it for sure. It's in consideration, but I'll end the poll because you guys seemingly agree, and you guys are basically greenlighting it in front of my very eyes with that one poll. So that's the way it is. But you know what also happens to be greenlit is this Republican nomination for Trump. And yeah, you could say things could change. Things could change. The voting hasn't started yet, they say. The DeSantis people say polls don't matter. Well, hate to break it to you, if you're down by 43 points, I think the polls matter. Because yeah, when we look at a poll in Wisconsin that's really poorly conducted, that has a horrible sample of the general electorate, and it said Biden was up by 17 points, the poll's wrong by 17 points, it's going to get ridiculed. And it should get ridiculed because it doesn't really just make any sense, and it was wrong. And there were plenty of undecideds in those polls too, but it doesn't matter. That's beside the point. When you see in every single poll, and this isn't just an outlier poll pulling up or pulling down the aggregate one way or another, every single poll, you are down by 40 points. You have 2 polls where you are not down by 40 points. You are down by 39 in one. And in probably one of the more egregious outliers, Monmouth, which is DeSantis at 17%. Oh, wow, he's doing great. It shows that Trump has a 38-point lead. And that's an issue because you can't even point me to the polls that are accurate in these people's worldview, because if some polls are wrong, most mainstream polls are wrong in some election, fine. But if you look at 1 or 2 of these polls out there for every election cycle, they get it right. But if every single poll shows the same thing, and every single poll shows your candidate is down by at least, we'll be nice, 38 points. Okay, in reality, the aggregate 43, it could be even wider than that, depending on the primary, depending on the turnout, you name it. It doesn't matter. If you're down by that much in every poll, you're down by a lot. Even if they're all off by 10 points, even if they're all off by 15, it doesn't matter. You're still down. You're still getting absolutely demolished out there. And if you're going to sit back there and cross your arms and say, oh, everything's fine here, Trump is hated, he's going to go down, you're just living in fantasy land. They don't get it. Their campaign is the worst run campaign I've ever seen. It's run by insufferable internet morons who are smarter than they really are. They attack Trump for the dumbest things in many cases. And even if they have legitimate grievances here and there, usually if you're looking at the situation objectively, those same grievances would apply to Ron DeSantis. And on top of that, they didn't say anything about this during Donald Trump's presidency. They didn't say a single word about Donald Trump being bad. Oh, he's a fake conservative, or he's crazy with this thing he's doing, or he's messing up here. They didn't say a single word. Even when it comes to the things like the lockdowns, they didn't say anything about it back then. But now, all of a sudden, because Donald Trump is out of the picture and they think they can get rid of him and his brand, now they're saying, well, we're gonna move to the right on these issues because we're going to try to swindle his base away from him. And guess what? It's not working. It's not working at all, and it shouldn't work. And it's a big middle finger that they're trying to do that, and they have sinister intentions while doing so. And I think it's important. I think that's probably the number one reason why people should support Trump is just look at his opponents. Look at who is behind his opponents. Look at who is funding his opponents. It's pretty obvious. But nevertheless, they can't see it. They can't see the fact that the writing's on the wall. They can't accept the fact that they're incompetent morons. They can't accept the fact that they are built to lose, and they can't accept the fact that they're losing. And the people that encourage DeSantis to run and are still encouraging him to stay in this race, they are the most delusional people of all. And DeSantis, to take the bait from these people, this is why people don't talk positively about Ron DeSantis anymore. It just shows, well, he's just an opportunist. And he's not even a good one because he's losing by 43 points. 43 points nationally. And this is with Donald Trump being indicted 4 times. This is with Donald Trump, skipping debates. It doesn't matter. Hasn't made a dent. Like the day after the debate, he dropped a point. And then he went up by 5 over the course of the next month because the mugshot helped him. It helped him in the primary polls. And honestly, the general election polls are looking good for Donald Trump too. And we saw this on Sunday, I believe. I did not make a video about it, but it arguably could be worth one. And I don't think the poll is entirely accurate. I do acknowledge that the poll is an outlier. Donald Trump is not up more likely than not by 10 points. I wish he was, but we got to be a little bit realistic here. Up by 10? No. Is he up? Yes. And I think the fact you have outliers like this on the positive side for Trump show that he is up. And it shows that he can win. And not only can he win, he is the favorite. He is the favorite right now against Biden for all intents and purposes. If you look at the head-to-head polls, he is defeating Biden. DeSantis, on the other hand, is trailing behind. He's trailing behind by 3 to 4 points compared to where Trump is polling at against Biden. His numbers are in the gutter. They're in the gutter among Republicans, but also they're in the gutter compared to where they were among independents. Maybe it's because people like the idea of DeSantis. Maybe they wanted to window shop around a little bit. Maybe they said, well, maybe, we could do something different. Maybe, Trump is getting older, they said. Maybe we'll look into these other options. And then they look into the other options at their, at their best, supposedly, and they're like, nah, screw this. We're going back to Trump. And that's what's happening. Trump is up in this poll among independent voters by 13. And like I said, I don't think he's up by that much overall. Is he up by 10? No. Is he up, though? Yes. And just because a poll has crosstabs that are weird doesn't mean the poll's inaccurate, because some of the most accurate polls have crosstabs that make zero sense. It just depends, where are they sampling? What is their sample? Not everything's going to be 100% weighed for, regardless of however you look at it. But what I will say is it's more likely than not that Donald Trump is in the driver's seat. Can a lot change between now and then? Yes. Should we get too cocky? No. But the bottom line remains the same. The same polls that had him down for several election cycles and underestimated him are the same polls that are now showing him ahead. And you could say, well, they're a part of some big grand conspiracy because they want Trump to be the nominee. But why would that matter exactly based off of the general election polls? Because when you look at it, Republicans at large tend to be the type to distrust polling. They do. So what exactly is the real argument there behind, oh, well, the polls, they're putting out fake polls? That's a cope. It's a cope because they're trying to lower the support for Trump while gaslighting the Republican base into thinking DeSantis is more viable in a general election, When you look at his primary and how that's going, and he's lost half of his support over the past 90 days, well, I don't really think that whatever they're cooking up there with their arguments are really all that accurate regarding Ron's electability, because he has none. Electability down the toilet, credibility down the toilet. It doesn't matter if you win Florida by 40. You're not winning nationwide with a campaign like this. All of the arguments they've used in favor of Ron's electability, they're out the window. They are. They don't make any sense. But nevertheless, the way the race stands right now, Donald Trump is competitive with Biden. He's likely leading Biden. We don't have a lot of swing state polling. Keep that in mind. But when we do get that, it's likely going to be a little bit more reflective of the popular vote margin. You're probably going to see him ahead in a lot of these states. And you could say, well, the 2022 midterms. Well, 2022 midterms sucked for Republicans for many reasons. The polls, I think, were wrong because the electorates that voted did not match the polls per se, did not match the samples whatsoever. It's not like the polls were entirely, skewed one way or another intentionally. So, and also the national polls were accurate, by the way. They were accurate, and a lot of the polls down the stretch were these like right-leaning internals. They, thought that a Trump-based turnout would turn out in places like Pennsylvania, like for a presidential year, and they never turned out that rate. And you look at the swing maps for 2022 in a lot of places, Republicans didn't do super poorly in the suburbs. They did roughly about average. They tended to struggle the most in those rural, areas where you have low propensity voters turning out for Trump. That's arguably the number one reason why Republicans lost a lot of these key races, and also mechanics and the fact that Republicans weren't using early voting or VBM the way that the Democrats do. Obviously that played a role as well. There's a lot of factors more so than one factor. But I'm not gonna be able to sit back here and say, well, I'm gonna discount every poll because some state polls in 2022 happen to be wrong when they expected a sizable turnout from Trump's base that we didn't exactly get. And that's the bottom line. Presidential elections are different. I think it's more of an accurate thing to compare it to 2020 or 2016 more so than compare it to 2022 or 2018 or any midterm election before that. But that's the way we see it. But either way, the fact is you have a lot of people melting down about these polls. They're coping because they know that Donald Trump is the choice deep down, whether they want to admit it or not, that is probably going to stand a greater chance in a general election than somebody like a DeSantis, because DeSantis just does not generate the energy, for one. For two, on policy, he doesn't resonate with a lot of these voters that he needs to turn out. And the whole thing with, the suburbs, the suburban women vote, that they'll claim that, well, Trump is toxic to these people, DeSantis won't be. Look at where DeSantis stands on a lot of these key issues that those voters care about. If anything, he's going to be smeared as somebody who will strip your entitlements away and enact an unpopular national abortion ban, which I may personally agree with, but for electoral purposes, it's one of those third rail issues that Republicans, I'm not saying they need to cave on fully, but they need to be smart about how they navigate it so they don't exactly, touch it and then lose and then have the Democrats take over. And then you'll have codified Roe, which is a total disaster and would completely set back any progress that the pro-life movement has made in recent years. So there's that. You talk about the primary polls, DeSantis campaign. We know they've been coping for the longest time. And now Kari Lake might run for Senate in Arizona, which a lot of people have mixed feelings about. And you can, critique, or you could support, or whatever. If you don't support her in the primary, that's fine. But if she's the nominee, you're going to vote for her in the general if you live in Arizona. There's no reason for anybody not to, because her opponent is Ruben Gallego. He is a far-left Democrat. He would be the John Fetterman / Bernie Sanders combo in the state of Arizona. And that's not something that we want. That's not something that we like. And you could say, well, there's Kyrsten Sinema. No, there's not Kyrsten Sinema. Kyrsten Sinema does not exist even if she's on the ballot because she's not going to win. Therefore, you have two options, plain and simple. If you vote for Sinema as a Republican because, oh, Lake is mean, I don't like Lake because she's mean, or whatever nonsense they want to throw out there, well, you are voting for Gallego because a Republican vote for Sinema is not a vote for Sinema, it's a vote for Gallego because Sinema's not winning, has zero shot. A Democrat vote for Sinema, ironically enough, is a vote for Lake. And I think you will get a lot of Sinema votes from these supposed McCain Republicans that exist in high numbers. They don't exist in high numbers. They exist, but not in high numbers. They're probably like 10%, not even, of that electorate. They'll vote for Sinema. A lot of them are not voting for Trump, though. They'll vote for Sinema, they'll vote for Biden, or they'll vote third party at the presidential label. I know, or presidential level. I know that No Labels, the party No Labels, has registered 15,000 voters recently in the state of Arizona. So looking at the big picture there, it's pretty evident that any Republican could win that race so long as they don't like run behind Trump, because Trump's probably going to get 48, 49% anyways. And I don't know who's going to vote for Trump and then say, I can't stomach voting for Lake. She's too mean. She's grifting, they'll say. It's ironic because they'd be supporting the biggest grifter in the Senate with Sinema, and then they'd be voting for Sinema and Trump. It just doesn't make sense. I refuse to see how those voters really exist whatsoever, unless they just happen to just despise Biden, but also despise Lake. I just don't know. I really don't know who those people are. But Pedro Gonzalez is a professional grifter, just like Kyrsten Sinema. He's bounced around the political compass like a bouncy ball. He was a Bernie bro, and then he was like a Groiper, and then he was like one of those populist bros, and then he was like one of these like now DeSimp neocon defending types, I guess, because he just bounced all over. He has no convictions. He's been in every quadrant of the political compass over the past 6-7 years. I mean, there's no way to chalk it up. You talk about being a grifter. He says Lake is an insane grifter, but Sinema's a smart independent. Kyrsten Sinema votes with Biden 100% of the time. Not 80%, not 90%, not 95%, not 99%, 100% of the time. She is also a grifter. She will moral grandstand. Oh, I'm keeping the filibuster, or she'll like not raise the minimum wage by $1 or something like that. Therefore, we're supposed to treat her as this independent bulwark against Biden's agenda. She co-signs much of Biden's agenda. Maybe not one or two things. She'll do this moral grandstanding thing, but it wouldn't matter regardless of whatever she's doing because you have Manchin. And at least Manchin doesn't vote with Biden 100% of the time. He votes with them like 90-something, 91, which I'm not giving him much credit for. I think they're both fake moderates to a large degree, but because they barely dilute Biden's agenda, it doesn't necessarily make them independents or smart. She's not smart whatsoever. You know, Sinema's somebody that started out as a Marxist. She would call herself a Prada-socialist. She was a part of the Green Party. She was a far-left activist. Then she goes to Congress, and then she grifts by being somewhat bipartisan. Back then, her voting record was better than it was now, by the way, if we're going to use that same logic. Then she gets to the Senate. She grifts this, oh, I'm going to be the fake moderate there. And even though she's moving to the left, she leaves the Democrats, but doesn't change who she's caucusing with. She doesn't change her voting pattern. She is no different than any of the other people in the Senate that happens to have a D next to their name. She is no different from any of those people. She's playing a role. She's in an R plus, 0.5 state, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. Either way, she's playing the role she wants to play because she needs to play it. And even then, she's not playing it very well. It's a very lazy job. It's a very lazy grift. Everyone can see through it if they read the fine print. Pedro Gonzalez is not smart enough to read the fine print, apparently. And now he is saying that, or hinting that he would prefer Kyrsten Sinema to Kari Lake, despite the fact that Lake, some people could say, well, I think that, the post-election antics are her focusing on the past, or they could say that the lawsuits aren't going anywhere. You know what? I agree with both of those things. I actually do, believe it or not. Some people might be mad that I do agree, but it's true. You're not going to win 2024 by complaining about the past. That goes for literally everybody. Doesn't matter if you're Trump, Lake, whoever. Doesn't matter. We have to focus on the future. If Lake runs for Senate and gets the nomination, I would expect her to be focusing on the future and not on the past if she was going to do that. You have to learn from the mistakes of previous campaigns if you ever do run for something again. And if people don't like her and they don't want to vote for her in the primary, they vote for Mark Lamb and he wins, well, I'd support Lamb in the general. I mean, he seems okay, seems decent, but it's beside the point. The main point that I'm making is if Lake is the nominee, she goes to the Senate, she's going to be one of the best senators on the Republican side. Her voting record is going to be absolutely stellar. She will be joining the ranks of, the Vances and the Hawleys to some extent. I don't think she's as versed on policy as some of those people, but at a very minimum, she's going to be in your best 5, best 10 senators if you like her or you don't. I mean, if you are actually somebody who is remotely conservative, you could look at that and you could say, okay, well, yeah, she would be in terms of voting records. But Gonzalez can't do that because he has no principles. So I called him out about this as well, and he actually quote tweeted me with a bunch of screenshots of tweets of mine. Does not make sense because I said at 100% right here. I said apparently you're a smart independent when you're voting with Biden 100% of the time while claiming to be a moderate. That is a grifter. That's what a grifter does. She'll be friendly with the Republicans. She'll go to the Republican coat room for the 97,000th time. It's not going to change anything. She's the one parading herself around as this maverick independent. She's not. She's not whatsoever. She is as liberal as it gets. Is she as liberal as Bernie Sanders? No, but her voting record's actually more liberal than Bernie Sanders. Now, it's true that Bernie Sanders does vote no on some of those Biden bills for other reasons. I know that, but still the effect does kind of end up being the same at the end of it, doesn't it? It absolutely does. But Pedro doesn't get that. And Pedro says this: being MAGA means you can back terrible people and never say sorry because the grift is the point. So Pedro is now calling me a grifter, which is the biggest pot kettle thing I've ever seen in my life. But then he says it's not about advancing an agenda. It's about participating in a circus where losing is preferable to winning. Where is losing preferable to winning? Is there a single Republican influencer or just anybody who backed Kari Lake who would not rather have her in the governor's mansion of Arizona right now? I don't even know if there is one, but you get the point. As the governor of Arizona, can you name a single Republican out there who backed her who would rather have had her lose? I cannot name one because it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist whatsoever. Rather than reevaluating anything, these people just want to feel good about being losers, he says. Well, the bottom line is we've reevaluated a lot here, and I think a lot of people have reevaluated a lot. Trump even, whether you want to say he admits it on a regular basis or not, because he doesn't, he shouldn't feel the need to, he has changed up his strategy significantly than the one he used in 2020, the one that Pedro would critique from the right. But apparently, looking at it now, if you happen to support a candidate that loses, well, you're the problem, you're the grifter. And then he puts up these screenshots where I'm supporting Lake, and I say that Lake is the most electable candidate according to the head-to-head polls, which is true. If you put up these other people, they do worse than Lake. In many cases, they would have done worse. Robeson had all these problems. Salmon had a lot of problems. Salmon lost statewide in 2002. 2002 was when Arizona was a solid Republican state, and he was a typical Republican that these people claim would do well in the state of Arizona. And then I said Lake is more electable than Robeson. I stand by this. Everyone likes to use this as like some evidence of, oh, you're dumb or something. I disagree with the Mastriano thing, but I'll agree with the rest of the tweet. I don't know why he cut off the bottom of the tweet where I said cash-filled lies don't change the truth, possibly because he feels a little bit of a projection on that part. And then he's posting where I said Lake was running an general election campaign so far, which again, at the time, she did a decent job to the point where even the haters were quiet. I think there were problems there, obviously. I think a lot of people in Arizona took her victory for granted. I think that there were some messaging things down the stretch that I would probably have done differently if I was her campaign, but nothing had to do with, oh, Trump, nothing had to do with 2020. She didn't talk about 2020 after winning the primary. I think one time, like, a reporter asked her a question about it, and she kind of, sidestepped it in a relatively intelligent manner. But it doesn't matter. Just because Lake lost doesn't mean that if you supported Lake back in 2022, then you happen to be a grifter. That has nothing to do with the main point that I was making. It's a very incoherent attack, because what I was saying is, you look at somebody like Sinema. Sinema is a career liberal grifter who pretends to be this independent-minded individual when she's really not, and votes with Biden 100% of the time. Even if you want to say she's barely diluting the agenda, which also you could say she's just attaching herself to Manchin for political purposes. Folks, that's just all it is. That's all it is. So these people are attacking me and other people because they know they're losing, and they're trying to subvert the movement, and they're trying to trick them into supporting Sinema for some reason because Lake happens to, like Donald Trump and not be happy with the results of the way 2022 unfolded. That's what it comes down to. And like I said, we could look into the matter. We could critique some of her post-election antics. We could say, is this lawsuit really going anywhere? They're not. But still, it doesn't change anything. It doesn't change anything. Launching lawsuits that are long shot lawsuits is nowhere near comparable to voting with Joe Biden 100% of the time. No matter how you chalk it up, they'll say, oh, she's grifting donations. Okay, well, people know what they're donating to. People know they're donating to these lawsuits when they're donating to these lawsuits. I'd rather have her take all this money that she's apparently grifting and use it to fund a Senate campaign, because everybody knows that Mitch McConnell is not funding the Senate campaign. Everybody knows Mitch McConnell would rather fund a long shot rhino loser, carpetbagger, running in the state of Pennsylvania than fund Arizona, fund Nevada, fund Wisconsin, even Virginia. Virginia's possibly more winnable than Pennsylvania. It's true. Joseph Cow's a star candidate. Is he probably going to come up short? Yeah, he's probably going to come up short. But everybody knows that Bob Casey, no matter what happens, he's a juggernaut. I'm not saying that he's going to win by 10 again or 13. I know it's a presidential year. I mean, you could put the worst Republican possible up against him. He's not going to win by that margin because by default, it's a presidential year and Donald Trump's on the ballot. But still, regardless, you're not winning that seat unless Trump does actually win by the margin that this poll says he's going to win by, which is not going to happen. And that's that. Now, this is the stupidity within the GOP, and that kind of ties into this whole cinema stuff. They don't want to focus on Arizona. They don't want to flip Arizona. They don't want to win Arizona. They want to lose Arizona. Because cinema embodies the uniparty just like these people do, just like McConnell. Lake would probably not vote for McConnell because she's a little bit of a disruptor and they don't like it. They don't. They don't want disruptors in that chamber. That's why Mitch McConnell spent so much money instead of funding Nevada or Arizona. He spent so much money protecting Lisa Murkowski in Alaska, a safe red state, when she's the worst candidate that was running on the Republican side. It was Republican versus Republican. He supported the Republican that votes with Biden 70% of the time, or almost as much as Sinema votes with Biden. about 30% less. But still, ridiculous. Like, yeah, they want Montana, West Virginia, and Ohio to be prioritized. Okay. I mean, obviously, we know that. I mean, it's like an obvious selection. Like, there's no way around it. There's never been a more obvious selection ever of states to choose. I mean, like, it's unbelievable that, like, I would need to give them credit for that. Even a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old could point to those states and say, fund these states. We need to flip these states. These are the flippable ones. Then Pennsylvania. Michigan's more flippable than Pennsylvania. I know the state party's in shambles, but it's an open seat. Donald Trump has a fighting chance regardless in the state, especially if he's polling that well nationally. He can transcend that. And on top of that, James Craig, overall, I think he could outrun Trump in some places, and then Trump could carry the rural turnout, just like we saw with, Toomey in 2016, Ron Johnson in 2016, John James in 2020, even though he fell short. But still, you get the bottom line there, especially because it's an open seat. Michigan is worth focusing more energy on than Pennsylvania. But because they know that they could possibly A, screw over some solid candidates again, and B, possibly have the long shot of getting their Rhino Golden Boy in there, well, that's what they're going to do. And if McCormick wins, he wins. I mean, that means Republicans had a very good night and probably flipped a bunch of other Senate seats, and having one milquetoast Rhino in there isn't going to change much. I'm not going to cry about it, but still, either way, there's no reason to prioritize it. Arizona's very winnable. I think people really underestimate how the three-way race is going to necessarily shake things up, because they're like, oh, all these Republicans are just going to vote for Sinema. But the Republicans are also going to vote for Trump, though. They don't understand Trump exists. Trump still has a high floor. It might not be in the mid-50s, but even if it's in the mid to high 40s, that's more than enough to carry a Senate nominee with him. It is. Republicans always outperform Trump, it seems, when he's on the ballot carrying the tidal wave of turnout. Even like MTG, Paul Gosar, Andy Biggs, Gates, even Boebert back in 2020, they ran in line with Trump or they ran ahead of Trump. Doesn't matter who it is. That's how it typically works when Trump's on the ballot. He carries the wave. He's like the offensive lineman. He's pushing the bag down the field during practice. That's how it works with Trump. And they don't get that. You have these people that spend their entire lives working in politics. They can't do something that's a basic observation, as basic as it possibly could be. They can't grasp it for whatever reason. But it's in many cases, it's intentional. We know why they're doing it. We know why they bungled 2022. Who cares? They could just blame Trump for all their problems, just like they could blame Trump for all their problems. Even if he wins, they'll still probably blame him for whatever down ballot losses they may have. And it's like, no, you suck. Your candidates, in many cases, suck. Your messaging sucks. And you never learn from it, which means that there's really no point in trying to believe in these people anymore to put together a decent strategy, in many cases. And one of those cases where it's a little bit different is the state of Virginia, which we covered very briefly at the beginning of the show. But we talk about early voting and the importance of it. And Virginia Republicans seem to be waking up. I mean, they're leading Democrats in the total early vote in Virginia, or they were a little bit earlier today. They're up, it's incredible, because early votes tend to be where you see Democrats do the best, because they tend to be the ones that promote it, they take advantage of it. But now Republicans are changing their tune, they're changing their approach across the board. I think it's a wonderful thing, because now, even though we don't like election month, we don't like early voting in September of all months, we understand, especially in this polarized climate, we could use it to our advantage. We can bank as many votes as we possibly can early on. That's how we do it, so then we can win. It's what Florida does. Now Virginia's doing it. Folks, we could see this nationwide. Then we're going to be able to really just win like, honestly, I think a lot of people are not expecting to win. And that's what it comes down to. None of this, we're going to wait to vote. None of this stuff. No, we should be finding people to turn out on election day that we ordinarily would not have been able to reach by election day, because we're going to have people voting as early as possible. So we're not going to have to reach those people. So then we could focus, laser focus in on people that usually don't vote, the low propensity voters, get them to turn out on election day, but also really reduce the traffic there. So, maybe these places, these polling places, are not going to be able to have lines that are too long or run out of ballots or whatever. There's not going to be these waits. We're not going to see Maricopa the Redux, and maybe we're going to have better returns at the end of the day regardless. So, that's that. But I like what I see out of Virginia. Youngkin and company are turning the corner there. Democrats are in shambles. One of their star candidates turned out to have a sex scandal, and it's not really looking too good for them. And there's like a new poll in that district. She's down by like 15 points in a Biden +5 district. That's how it works. And we got to bank as many votes as we possibly can, get that turnout up. Keep it up. What they're doing now, so far so good. They need to keep going. They need to find every last ballot they possibly can find, get the turnout up as high as they can. Because if they get Youngkin a majority in both chambers, he's going to be able to really get to work, and he actually can govern like it's Kansas or that's not even a good example because they don't even have a Republican governor, but Nebraska, just like an actual red state, but it's Virginia. And do what he can do to really turn the corner as much as he possibly can. And I think it's going to be a very good thing if it gets done right. So this is really what it comes down to. They really got to get that taken care of there in the state of Virginia. But I like what I see from the early returns, because you don't even have to lead the early vote as a Republican. But if this stands and they're leading the early vote as a Republican like the day before election day, and they're really going to be in for a big victory. It's going to be Florida all over again, but in Virginia, which I don't know if I'll expect it to stay. But so long as they're outpacing 2021, then we should really be good in that department, which that was honestly a little bit before this whole tell Republicans to vote early craze kicked in, which really happened to be like the week after the midterms when people just woke up and said, whatever the hell we're doing right now is not working. And as awful as she's been at certain times, credit to Ronna where it's due for launching and listening and launching the Bank Your Vote thing for the RNC, because now they're going to be able to do it nationally, especially because they're getting the infrastructure as of now. So hopefully that leads to something. But as of right now, we have 13 super chats, folks. Oh man, it's been a long monologue, and I'm not giving up yet, but we gotta get into what we see here. Chris Creative says, news says Youngkin might jump in the race. Why? I don't believe he is. And people have been saying this for a while. Youngkin has been politically active lately in campaigning because he wants the Senate. He wants the Virginia Senate, which is a risky move to really politicize these races in the state. But his approval rating is super high to the point where he might be able to ride the wave and get some of these seats there based off of his popularity alone. Youngkin is not somebody who I would really support in a presidential primary. I'm not going to say he's super based. We need him to run for president like a lot of these people said like the day after he won. Because, a Republican won a governorship, we got to make them. No, it's not how it works. And what I will say about it, though, is that he is somebody who's very good for the state that he's in, and he should be given credit as such. But at the same time, he's also smart. I don't think he's like a total sellout. I don't think he's I've heard from people he's actually secretly based in some ways. He gets it more so than not, to the point where I don't think he would do that. They would really have to be paying him a lot of money too, and I'm sure there's a high price for him regardless, but either way, I don't think Youngkin would do it because he's not stupid. He's not dumb, and he's not delusional. That's pretty much it. Even if he was this guy who's really would be a total neocon if he got to the national stage, which may be the case. he was a part of the Bush firm. He was the CEO of the Carlyle Group. But nevertheless, even so, that doesn't mean that he's not going to, be a solid governor or that he hasn't done a fairly decent job so far. But nevertheless, him at the presidential level, it's not going to happen this time because he's not dumb or delusional, unlike DeSantis and unlike DeSantis' acolytes. So Mr. Jimmy says, should GOP focus on New York and California for the popular vote in House? No, I don't care about the popular vote. You could lose it by 20 and still win. You could win it by 20 and still lose. Not actually realistically, but I'm just saying, hypothetically, given how many votes you could, plug into each state, it's possible you could have a big popular vote loss and still win, and you could have a big popular vote win and still lose. That's the bottom line I'm saying. Now, I think that there needs to be a focus on certain House districts in certain blue states, and I think that you bring up a good point there. But, either way, does it mean that you have to campaign in every single state to do it? Not necessarily. Obviously, the state parties just need to be competent at getting out as many voters as they possibly can and then go from there. Mitchell Ryan says, what are your thoughts on moving to Rumble? Well, I have a Rumble. I'm not going to only move to Rumble. People say, why would you be on a platform like this? Well, there's more people. It's pretty obvious why I would be here. But Rumble, it's a decent alt-tech platform overall. I cross-stream there sometimes. Usually if it's like a big stream, I'll do it maybe tomorrow because it's going to be the post-debate stream. But other than that, I think YouTube as it stands now, I think people should follow me on both. But this is where the action really is, and a lot of people tend to be here. It's a very, very large platform, and as a result, I think it's useful to reach as many people as we possibly can, even with whatever algorithmic boosting or deboosting that may or may not occur. Noah Boyd says, hey, Rep, I'm running for state representative in Pennsylvania's 141st district, working with Right for Bucks Grassroots MAG is taking over the Rhino Party here in Bucks County. Going to take VDN to power in Pennsylvania. I don't know what VDN stands for, but thanks for the super chat. Good luck to you on your election. Stephen Kanizik says, if Red Eagle Politics had a podcast, there's no Rogan-style pot hijinks or Tim Pool-style graphene ads, then what's the point? I kid. Well, podcast can be a lot of different things. It could be, a guest format. You could have guests on. You could have more of like a lounge setup where you have multiple guests and you talk about whatever. Or you could just talk kind of like how I'm doing right now. Some people will say this is a podcast. Some people even say my regular uploads on YouTube tend to be podcasts, which is technically not true because they're YouTube videos. But I could see why people would say that because, there are some podcasts people have. They're like 15 minutes long and they don't have... It's just audio. And my videos, there's visuals, but typically I don't put my face in my videos, although I might change that up as we get closer to the election cycle. I think that it's good for the brand that we do have the face cam. I've had it before from time to time, and why not bring it back? Kyle Beckman for $20 says, hey, Red Eagle, keep up the great work. Can you expand on where you think Trump is in the battleground states? By the way, I have sympathy for DeSantis because I think he legitimately has Asperger's syndrome. Well, he's awkward, I will say that. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to diagnose the guy. But he is very awkward for somebody who's the governor of a major state, just won an election victory there as an incumbent. He's relatively awkward. He does not have charisma. He seems lost at times. And he's somebody that would legitimately possibly get on a debate stage with Joe Biden and, just happen to not win. And people will say, well, Trump didn't win the first debate. And even if we want to assume that's true, it wasn't because Trump wasn't able to relate to people. It was just because he interrupted too much and would not let Biden, talk and trip over himself. And then when he, in the second debate where he let Biden talk and trip over himself a little bit more and still got in his subtle jabs, Biden even admitted Trump won the debate and he had to do damage control and said, well, actually, don't let last night's debate performance from Trump prove that he's calm and collected. It's like you're admitting defeat. But Nevertheless, it's beside the point. What I will say is, in terms of the battleground states, Biden's not popular in any of them. And Biden being on the ballot, Trump being on the ballot, Trump needs to win over independents who are disillusioned with Biden, and maybe enough of them that, didn't exactly vote for him to win. And that's even if you assume there's no turnout surge based off of Republicans viewing the election system differently, because there may be. But I don't think we could always count on that while we're still doing it in the process. I think there needs to be messaging. There needs to be all this campaigning down the stretch. There needs to be the 5-state focus. Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada. I mean, you don't need to be going to Florida very often, or North Carolina, or Ohio, or Iowa. You don't want to spend time in those states. You're likely winning them all by, I would say, a decent amount. North Carolina is going to be, within 5, obviously, but you're not going to have to worry about Florida. You're probably going to win North Carolina, even if it's only by like 2 or 3. You're definitely going to win Ohio. You're definitely going to win Iowa, possibly by 10 points plus now. So Dustin Carner's race to the White House is Trump winning Georgia by 2.4. I mean, that it's possible. It's possible. It just depends. Like the lieutenant governor of Georgia candidate back in 2022, he was a Trump-aligned candidate through and through. He won by like 5. Herschel Walker underperformed, not because he was tied to Trump. He underperformed because he had all these skeletons in his closet and he couldn't speak to save his life. I mean, in a way, it was like the Republican Fetterman. Maybe not as bad, obviously, but I mean, he's taken one too many hits to the head over his career and kind of shine through during the campaign trail. David Zintara says the ABC News poll is an outlier, but there are not outlier polls showing Biden up by 10 points. Oh, there are not. Yeah, there's no poll showing Biden up by 10. There was a poll a couple months ago that showed Biden up by like 6. And then all of these people on the DeSantis side were just promoting that poll. Well, all the other polls are fake, but this one, I have no evidence for why, but it's true because of my feelings, whatever. And now their cope is, well, this poll shows that if Trump goes to jail, he'll only get 21% of the vote, which is not true. They ask a very leading question, then they pull them head to head, but Trump's in jail, and Trump's down by, I think, 4 points of where he was before, and like still in striking distance of the Electoral College. And even then, it's like, that doesn't even take into account the fact that if he does go to jail, Republicans are going to politicize it on their end. They're still going to ramp up all the support for him. It's probably that whatever lead Biden gets off of that's probably going to be washed away if it happens before our very eyes. I mean, Trump has been indicted 4 times. Possibly he's going to get indicted again for who knows what fake reason. And his numbers are only doing better in the primary and also the general. It's because people don't care. They know that it's all bogus. And it also makes Biden look like a third world dictator, targeting his political opposition. One of the reasons why I think they're going after Menendez is because of the fact that they want to appear bipartisan. Oh, throw this guy under the bus. Which I know Menendez is corrupt. Menendez has been corrupt his entire career. Why are they going after him right now for this thing? That's my question, because they want him to lose a primary, possibly. I don't know. But either way, looking at it, I think them targeting him will be like, oh, the mandate. Oh, well, we're bipartisan about it. We're throwing this guy under the bus. It's like, you don't like that guy anyways. He, doesn't like Biden's foreign policy. So, whatever. Steven Kanizik says, Max Nordau quote tweeted me several times. Just lean into the debate and humiliate Pedro in his own timeline. Well, Nordau is very annoying. I mean, he's one of the most annoying DeSimps because he'll tweet at everything. I know he's a paid operative in the DeSantis administration. I'm not sure he's the Brian guy. They're very similar voice, but maybe he's some other guy there because he's tweeted out things that only Tallahassee had access to multiple times, to the point where it's like, this guy has to be, he runs an anonymous account. He has to be someone close to DeSantis in his circle They all do their little group chats. They have all their retweeting mobs. They retweet his replies to other people. And either way, I want them to keep doing it. I want them all to keep doing it because they're losing. I mean, now they're saying, now whenever they talk about Trump, it's like they get the memo. They have to put Trump, and then they have to put his like pronouns next to his name, the way the liberals do, because when they asked him, can a man become a woman, he said, he just paused for like 3 seconds and was like, yeah, I don't think it works that way. And like, that's how Trump answers questions. Like, Trump probably is not as attached to that debate as a lot of other people. He doesn't really bring up that kind of stuff. But I think he does know that the woke stuff, it's crazy. It's too far. But, when he's like a boomer to the point where if you ask your average person on the street, they're going to come up with the same response, to the point where, is this like an own? Trump and DeSantis came to the same conclusion. Trump just did it like your average voter. But apparently that's a knock on Trump, and that means Trump believes that men can become women somehow, but he doesn't actually. So I don't know. I'm very confused about that. I'm very confused as to how they get to these conclusions. But when you're down by as many points as you are, you have to lie. You have to lie to these people. You have to gaslight people. You have to act annoying and insufferable and fill up our timelines with garbage. But it's not going to change anything. Oh, but Iowa, it starts with Iowa. You're down by 33 in Iowa. 33 points. It's like, oh, well, Trump's not down 40 in Iowa. No, he's down by 35. It's like, really? Is that the new GOPe? What happens when he loses Iowa? What happens when he loses Iowa by 40? What happens when he gets in third place in Iowa? What's the GOPe then? Like, seriously. It doesn't matter. It's Trump's party. For valid reason, because all these other clowns, they don't cut it. That's the GOP of old. That's the GOP they want to go back to. And that GOP in this day and age, it's not viable. It's not viable whatsoever. You're not going to be able to coast by on those low turnout 2010, 2014 midterms anymore. It doesn't work that way. You're not going to coast by on those elections. You're not going to be able to compete as well with those establishment candidates. Look at like 2012, for example. Doesn't work. Doesn't work. Doesn't mean that everyone that's aligned with Trump or whatever is guaranteed victory. They obviously don't. And I think that we learned a lot regarding the 2022 midterms. Trump's not in the ballot. Doesn't matter who he endorses. They're going to fall short. I mean, that's how it is. If they're going to be underfunded and Trump's not in the ballot to supercharge turnout, yeah, a lot of these people are going to fall short. That's just the way it works. Ronnie Hernandez says, can you see Trump picking Mace as VP? I hope not. Yeah, I genuinely hope that doesn't happen. I don't know. She's probably not going to be in the selection. I think it's going to be Noam. I'm not thrilled with that, to be honest. I think that Noam is somebody that is very fake in many ways. But, I mean, you're not going to find a perfect VP. You're just not. And I'm not going to be thrilled regardless of whoever he puts up there, I'm sure. So, Tucson Paleocon for 20. Says most conservatives I know support Cinema either do so because they think she's attractive, which she's not, by the way, or because they have lake derangement syndrome. Yeah. LDS is not just for Mormons. It's also for Arizona neocons. Yeah, there is a lot of overlap there, but still beside the point. I mean, there's no reason for anyone to support Cinema. There isn't. Especially if you're a Republican. I mean, that's the way it is. Sam Madsen says, what's more winnable, Wisconsin with Clark or Pennsylvania with McCormick? Pennsylvania with McCormick. Clark is a horrible candidate for a lot of reasons, and I think a lot of people need to steer clear from him. He has a lot of skeletons in his closet. I don't believe he can win. I don't believe he's even going to run a very competent campaign. Whatever we saw, it's going to be a mix of Mastriano and Herschel Walker. With all the scandals combined with the lack of funding, it's not a good option, especially because you have somebody running that could possibly sink the ticket being down ballot. You don't want that to happen whatsoever. You definitely want somebody relatively decent in there that could at least hold the ticket afloat. That's going to be the Senate nominee. And I think we need somebody that actually gives us a chance, not somebody who's going to be one of these people that they're going to point to and say, well, we can't have your type of candidate because David or Clark or whatever his name failed. And it's like, Clark isn't even that ideological from what I understand anyways. Like he's just a sheriff who is not really that good at his job after a certain point and stopped being the juggernaut that he was. So Eric Jenkins says, Red Eagle politics over Fox News. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. I mean, obviously, I'd have to agree with that. Mr. Jimmy says, can Republicans win New Jersey Senate with Menendez on the ballot? Probably not. I wouldn't encourage people to try and flip these long shot races that they're not going to flip. RWB Gaming, thanks for the $1. Noah Boyd says, VDN, like, is Vince down now? Yeah, I actually haven't heard that phrase in a while. It's been a couple years. But I guess you're right. Follower of Christ says, hello from the great state of North Carolina. Which solid Republican state and solid Democrat state do you think would have the biggest chance of turning competitive? I think we're going to have to say Rhode Island and Kansas. I mean, those are the two. We're Delaware and Kansas. Maybe New Mexico. I don't know. We'll have to see after a cycle or two what happens there. If the Republican Party wasn't so broken, I think they'd have a shot. But who knows? Depends on Hispanic trends as well, which the jury's still out on quite a bit of that. But like the New Mexico Hispanics are similar by and large to those in like South Texas. So maybe it's possible. I don't know. Wouldn't prioritize it though, but we'll see. FM32047 says hot take. I think James Craig can win Michigan Senate. I agree. He could. If Trump takes the state, which is possible, even if you want to say he's not favored. Yeah, I think Craig can win. Hopefully he gets on the ballot this time. FM32047 says if Trump endorses Mooney in West Virginia, could he beat Jim Justice? Probably not. I mean, Justice is just that popular to the point where I don't think that it's going to make much of a difference. Manny says, what are your thoughts on UAW president attacking Trump for being rich and welcoming Biden with open arms? Then Joe left Michigan for a Silicon Valley fundraiser. It showcases what I've said about unions. The union bosses do not have the best interests of the workers in mind. And these unions always devolve into Marxism in some way or another throughout history. And it's like, who cares if Trump is rich? They said we're tired of these millionaires in our political system. Joe Biden's net worth is at least $10 million. He's enriched himself and his family through corruption and politics. Donald Trump got into politics and he lost money. His net worth is down. If anything, it proves that we need more people like Trump who get into politics and end up losing their money than people that just build their fortunes off the backs of the people. So obviously, yeah, I think that the UAW president's out of line, and I think all these unions do not have the best interests of their workers in mind. And as a result, that's why you see a lot of these union workers either A, leaving unions, or B, becoming more Republican-minded per se, especially with somebody like Trump out there. Sam Madsen says, how close will the Senate be if Menendez isn't primaried? It'd probably be a very close race. It'd be very close. If he's not I thought you said if the primary happens. Yeah, the primary would be close in my opinion, but the Senate race is probably going to be like a 7-point race, 8-point race. Depends how much Biden ends up taking New Jersey by. Miss Winnie says, creepy Pence and DeSantis are loathed here in New England. You don't need New England to win a general, but the ideology in academia and medicine shouldn't be ignored. Lefties in New England at least admit Trump was right. I've never seen them admit that, but I will say that the same people who are resist libs, who got angry at Trump, who would turn out against Trump, all of these people, for the most part, would do the same against a lot of these other Republicans for whatever reason. It's true. I mean, these people turned out big in 2022 in certain states for certain elections where Donald Trump did not really bear that much influence. I mean, you saw turnout in Wisconsin for that state, for the Supreme Court election, where Trump didn't even, say anything positive or negative about the Republican candidate who ran from every single issue, tried to be this like, oh, I'm the moderate judge when he won the primary. Didn't work out too well for him. He lost by 11 points. Why? Because Madison turned out big and Milwaukee turned out big, and they turned out based on the abortion issue. And you look at Dan Kelly, he ran from it. He didn't even try to spin it or go on offense on anything. That's what losers do. They just bend over and lose. That's what the Republican establishment does. Somehow Trump got blamed for that loss. I don't know how. Trump's to blame for everything. Trump's to blame for whatever. You name it. Trump is to blame for anything according to these people. Doesn't matter. Trump's to blame for Republicans losing New Hampshire House District, whatever, even though nobody knew this election was taking place, even in the district. So whatever. They're going to blame him for Kentucky too. They will. Has nothing to do with Trump, the fact that Cameron's campaign is mediocre and he's going up against an incumbent that should not be as popular as he is, and if he had a different last name, he would not be as popular as he is. It doesn't matter. Trump will still get blamed for all of it, for whatever reason. It's ridiculous, but it doesn't matter. He'll win the state by 30, 31, 32 points next year, regardless of what happens, but for some reason, I'm sure they'll find a way to blame him for that, or to blame him for this election too. It's ridiculous. Based Katos' thoughts on the far left groups like the Young Turks wanting Biden to drop out for any other Democrat candidate. They've been coping over the recent polling. I saw that, actually. I'm surprised that they're actually doing that, but I mean, I understand why they would, because it's true. They know Biden can't likely win easily. But at the same time, who else can? You going to convince me Kamala Harris is a better candidate? Are you going to convince me that Gavin Newsom is a better candidate? I mean, maybe he's more of a blank slate, but there's a lot of subject matter to attack him on too, to the point where I don't really know if he's all that. And there's no way that he's going to run. I mean, he'd have to be announcing by now, you would think. But it is true, Biden hasn't declared. I do believe Biden's going to run. He's declared his intention to run. I don't believe the paperwork's been filed unless it was done very quietly. So I don't know. Mr. Jimmy says, if RFK Jr. runs as a libertarian, would it hurt Biden? I don't think so. RFK Jr. is liked more by the Trump wing of the Republican Party than pretty much anybody. Democrats don't like him. If they vote for him, it's mainly going to be an I don't like Biden, so I'm filling out my ballot thing, or I don't know who this guy is type of thing. He's not somebody that really resonates with the Democrat base. He probably would have a better shot running as a Republican, assuming that you had like an open field that wasn't already cleared like the field we have now. So, I mean, there's that. There's really nothing to him that's really a Democrat besides, well, I mean, he has liberal policy, but it's not sufficient enough for them besides his environmental policy. Like, that's it. He has the environmental policy, but then he talks like he talks like a Tulsi Gabbard type on a lot of things like foreign policy, on domestic policy. I mean, we could say, yeah, he's not a Republican. He's not. I mean, objectively, he's better than most Democrats, but that's not really saying much. But if he runs third party, I think the people that are going to vote for him are probably going to be like the diehard Trump types who might not like Trump's, stances or past stances on the vaccine. Like, that's who his voter base would end up being. Shout out to Matt Gagnon for the $1. Appreciate it. Every bit helps. Brown says, I see more Andy Brasher, so we mean Bashir signs in my neighborhood more than Cameron. Well, yard side analysis doesn't mean anything. I mean, let's be real. If it did, Trump would win pretty much every state because he tends to have the most yard signs, even in areas that are not super favorable to him. But I will say that Bashir does probably win. I don't want him to, but incumbent governors have not been going down lately unless their approval rating is like in the gutter, like Matt Bevins was, and there's a decent candidate running on the other side. There's a reason why we did so poorly in 2022 in some places, and partially it was because incumbent governors did well. The one exception was Nevada, where Sisolak's approval rating was not super high, and he ended up falling short to a candidate who was very well known in the large population center of the Vegas area in Clark County. So, I mean, there's that. So, all right, I think this will be the last call for Super Chats. We will be streaming tomorrow, regardless. We'll stream tomorrow after the debate. Whenever that ends, we'll do a stream. So I'll be back. We're not going anywhere. But other than that, it's been real. We've talked about a lot. We're gonna keep the conversation going, for sure. I mean, between now and whenever the primaries begin, we're gonna be doing our streams. I can't wait for it's almost gonna be like a weekly primary stream, because every Tuesday there's going to be primaries. And even after the presidential primaries are over in July, August, then you're going to have some of these down ballot primaries, which don't usually, I mean, I think there's a couple of them that do fall on the same day as the presidential primaries, but there's a lot of them that don't. So it's like we kind of have double the streaming to do. This might be the last super chat of the night. Mr. Jimmy says, would a 2024 recession hurt Biden in the Rust Belt? Absolutely. Recession would hurt him everywhere. The economy's already in shambles by many metrics, to the point where, Trump is beating him in the popular vote. If you actually go into a full-fledged recession, and it does impact the Rust Belt the way the 2008 Great Recession did, then absolutely he's going to get hurt in the Rust Belt. I mean, plain and simple. The places that already have a lot of economic distress, typically, those places are going to be hurt the most. And, I mean, Trump will be able to really take advantage of that, especially because he had a very strong economy during his presidency. And that's also why people may not personally give him the favorable rating, but they still want him back in the White House, because they know how bad things have gotten, and they know how good things were 4 years ago with the pre-COVID economy that was doing so well back in 2019. So anyways, guys, we have another super chat. Sam Matson says, why did Walker and McCrory lose despite being incumbent governors? Well, Walker was up against the blue wave of 2018, and his approval rating wasn't really all that great. Same thing with McCrory in North Carolina. He pissed everybody off. He pissed off the left, obviously, with his stances on the bathroom stuff, and then he pissed off the right by just not really being all that good. And then you had Cooper run. So I mean, those are two examples. But even you have to look to 2010 even, because look at 2010 where you had such a red wave that was massive. You only had 2 Democrat incumbent governors lose. All the other governor pickups were open seats. One of them was in Ohio, where you had a very unpopular, or I would say relatively unpopular, Strickland lose to Kasich, who was a very big political name in the state, already ran for president back when he was in the House in like 2000, didn't get very far. Ran again in 2016, obviously. And then Iowa, which is another red-moving state, where you had a governor with a meh approval rating going up against a very popular former governor in the state, who Trump appointed to be his ambassador to China, I believe. I don't know. And then Reynolds took over back in 2017. So you look at those states even. I mean, like, besides that 2014, you saw the Pennsylvania governorship flip, partially because you had a governor with the approvals that rivaled Bush in 2009. So, I mean, taking out incumbent governors is a very hard thing to do on the surface level, because usually when people become governor, they become more popular. And even though a lot of governors like Whitmer saw dips when the COVID lockdowns became unpopular and more unpopular, a lot of people seem to forget about it by 2022, or at least put it on the back burner politically, and it didn't really affect their votes. But 2021, I mean, that was a big issue. You saw those referendums in Pennsylvania limit Wolf's powers. You saw Youngkin oppose mandates and win. You saw the New Jersey guy was in striking distance. And even Youngkin, like, even when it came to election stuff, 2021 did not hurt Republicans as much as 2022 talking about it, because it was still fresh in a lot of people's minds. A lot of people were angry. I mean, Youngkin called for audits. The guy that got within striking distance in New Jersey spoke at a Stop the Steal rally back in 2020. And it didn't seem to really impact things that much. But if people are going to make those key issues for 2022, 2024, it's not gonna bode super well. So DJ Aftershock says, does the national GOP need the Virginia GOP opposition research? Well, the Virginia GOP's opposition research was awful in 2017 because they couldn't find that yearbook picture of Northam. It took them like a year or two to get it. But I mean, recently they've been better, so who knows? Sam Madsen says Illinois was Illinois always hates their governors. I mean, even Darren Bailey got within, 12 points? And he wasn't really that funded at all, comparatively speaking. So, I mean, Illinois is a state that typically does. And actually, 2018, it flipped too. Rauner got completely trounced. But that's just how these things work. I mean, states that hate their governors, yeah, they'll flip the governorships typically. But if the state doesn't hate their governor, they're probably going to stay. Probably. For a while, we thought Reeves in Mississippi would be in trouble, but since his approval rating is kind of turned a corner, seems like he's going to be just fine in November. So, all right, we'll end it there, folks. It's been a real good live stream. We'll be back tomorrow. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Like the stream down below, subscribe, hit the bell, do all that good stuff. I'll see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle, out.